Hi there, welcome to Homekeepers. Come right on in, my friends. It is so wonderful to be here with you today. And I think I say it about every day, but I really believe we have brand new viewers every day. Our mail certainly indicates that. And I want you to know you are so welcome. And you know, when I move around Tampa Bay, I'm always pleased when gentlemen come up to me and say they watch the program too. That is wonderful and so gratifying. So God bless you. We love every one of you. Got a great program today. You know, sometimes you can feel a trend where, you think the Lord is moving. And I think it's kind of obvious to me that he is moving, you know, in the homosexual community and people that are caught up in this kind of specific sin. And because the Bible says God's not willing that any should perish. And I appreciate the guests he sent to us who are willing to tell their story and really make a bold statement for Christ. And that's what we have today in a young man, George Carneal. And when you see the title of his book, there's not going to be any question. But if you got his book, it's riveting. That's all I can say. And to the wonderful, wonderful, right-on, solid theology he has as he turned his life to Christ. But there's the name of it, From Queer to Christ. What could be plainer than that? And you know, I kind of appreciate that, and I'm glad that he and I have been in correspondence for several months, and he's finally here. And I have a great sense that I'm speaking to a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles and moms and dads and grandparents who have loved ones that are caught up in this. Don't give up. God certainly hasn't given up. And I'm going to join Wanda for a recipe that we've been criticizing all morning. So we'll give you our thoughts and how we think it could be better. I'll bet you do that when you cook. But before I join her, I want to again offer you, we call this love bracelet because it actually has parts of 1 Corinthians engraved on it. And I left mine upstairs, but we'll show you a picture of it, and if you'd like to have it, you call 1-800-229-0059 for your credit card or debit card, or write to me at Homekeepers Box 6922, Clearwater, Florida 33758, and we will get it right out to you. You see a nice picture of it there, and it's something that will complement anything you wear. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. And I have joined Wanda, and boy, you really verbally just hammered this recipe. But that's okay, because this woman is an unbelievable cook. But it's called hamburger stew, but you say you always use stew meat.
Well, stew, there's stewing meat.
Stew.
Yeah, and I would use beef broth. Those of you who are trying to watch your weight, as I am, reduced sodium is probably best. But you can.
So this has water in it, but
I would use beef broth, absolutely. And I mean, obviously this is called hamburger stew, so we have lean hamburger and onions in here that I've already really
yeah, she's already
browned it really well.
If I were doing it, I would add probably about a tablespoon of Worcestershire.
Yeah, absolutely. We probably could. It's going to need something because it's
you really want this recipe, don't you?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying. I like garlic. I like. I like just like a little more than what this calls for. I've already put the salt and pepper in.
Okay.
My mom always said you season your meat first in anything that you do. Otherwise, it's.
If her mom said it, and I'm sure
my mom's a cook from way back.
Okay, you've got so let's start dumping this in.
Sure, whatever you want, because.
And also, let me say that. We're making half of this recipe. It's a huge recipe.
Yeah.
So, and what all we can do, because I want to talk to George, is mix it together, and maybe we can let them know on a later program if it was good.
Well, now you can.
Some water?
Yeah. You can add your water and the rice and everything else. And actually, this is one of those things that I'm convinced it's going to have to simmer for a long time for everything to work together.
It might
and taste
surprise
really
us too.
Well, I'm hoping to be. I added some garlic, so you know I'm going to be happily surprised.
Yeah.
But this is some celery.
Carrots.
Yeah. You know what? I don't even think you need the stuff for the amounts because you can just do this at home and have fun.
Yeah.
And Arthelene cut up some potatoes.
And
you are so
we'll mix that up and just let it.
We're going to let this simmer. and it's hearty for sure.
Oh, you know, last week when we made the chicken quesadillas that we baked.
Yeah. Do you like that?
I tell you what, I came down the next day to try to find one for lunch, you know.
Missing in action?
Yeah. And Gary told me he was going to fix them last weekend, so that was a good one. But I'm sure you're convinced you want this wonderful recipe, and it might be good. Who knows? It's called Hamburger Stew, and we'll send it to you absolutely free. You know, you can email us. That's the best way to get it. But if you don't have a computer, write to us. We'll get it to you. That address will come up on your screen. We'll be glad to send it to you. And look how big that is, and that's half of it. So.
Oh, my grandson could eat.
Could he eat all that?
Yes, at least
I've got half
of that would be gone.
I got 4 grandsons, so
you know,
we'd have to make the whole.
We'd have to make the whole thing.
Yeah. All right. So that information's coming up for you, and stay with us. I want you to meet George Carneal. I think that you're going to like him a whole lot.
I agree.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, just write to the address on your screen, or you can email your request to arthelene@rippy.org.
Well, I'm very happy to introduce to you George Carneal, who said he wants to try some of our stew. So welcome, welcome. And you work for a law firm in the state of Alabama. Mm-hmm. Glad that you could be with us. I kind of like you to just tell your story. I have interviewed a lot of people who've come out of homosexuality, and there's a real similar story with all of them. And you were bullied a lot as a child. You're a big guy, you know, but you said you were very small then.
I didn't grow until I was late in high school.
Yeah, and they just picked on you mercilessly, and I understand that's still going on in schools today. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So you're a Baptist preacher's son, right? Mm-hmm. So just tell us your story, starting from, you know, where it didn't seem like you were like everybody else.
I just remember in first grade being, I thought there was a little blonde girl that was cute, but I also saw a little boy that I thought was cute as well. And that was when I really remember having my first crush on a guy. And I knew something, I thought maybe this is weird. And then as I started to, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade and what have you, the attraction was becoming much more strong. And I was really struggling with that, but being bullied by the boys who would call me sissy and faggot and queer bait, homo. And I didn't even know what those words meant. And when I finally figured out what it meant, I was really confused as to how could they assume something about me that I hadn't even been able to come to terms with myself. So I really was always in my head trying to understand this. And then in addition to the verbal abuse, you know, being physically assaulted and punched in the face, or I had one guy threaten to slit my throat. So school was not a safe place for me. So I really put
So
up walls.
this was going on before you had ever figured anything out. Did you, when, according to your book, they teased you about being kind of effeminate. Mm-hmm. But at that point, did you even know what homosexuality was?
I didn't, because back in the 70s, it's really something that wasn't discussed. At least I had not heard of it. So I had to figure all of this out on my own. You know, after I released the book, I had my mom and dad say to me, why didn't you come and tell us this was going on? But how embarrassing to go to your parents and say, I'm being called these names. So I really just dealt with it on my own. And it really caused for a lot of anxiety and depression and confusion, just trying to understand.
Because that was very young. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you still had junior high and high school.
Mm-hmm.
And did that continue?
Yes, it continued all through school. And yeah, just the abuse was constant. And school wasn't a happy place for me. So I was really glad to have graduated and get away from.
Did any of this ever come up in your family?
No, but in addition to dealing with all that confusion there, you know, you would go to church, and because my dad's a minister, and we'd go to revivals or other pastors would come in, inevitably Sodom and Gomorrah would always come up at some point. And that was another side of really feeling a lot of anger towards God. And one time my dad was preaching about Sodom and Gomorrah, and I mentioned it in the book, and he
And
may
how
have had
old
no
were you
agenda.
then?
I was probably maybe 13, 14.
So you kind of knew at that point.
I just knew that God had apparently destroyed these two cities because of homosexuals. And I was just seething. I was just like, I hate God, and I hated my dad for talking about it. And I didn't ask for it. I didn't know where it came from. I had never even experimented, I don't believe, at that point with a guy. So I was just confused as to where are these feelings coming from, and why am I struggling with this?
At what age did you just make a decision, well, this is my life, this is what I'm going for?
I had an encounter with a young boy when I was little. It felt right, but after I graduated, I met a guy in a nearby town, and we had met up and we'd go to dinner and stuff. And that's when it really clicked for me that this feels right to me and this is who I am. And I secretly just accepted it. And then eventually after my family moved to Florida.
Well, when you sort of accepted it to yourself, what was going on in your soul with the things that you had been taught from the scriptures? I was quite angry with Christians, and I was hurt from just what I'd gone through in school. It wasn't easy. I think I had just shut down. I think that felt so right to me. It felt nice to have a guy desire you or want to be with you, even if it was just kissing. It was just nice to feel affection, feel like you mattered to someone, even if it was for a brief moment. And when you have not had that for 16, 17 years, I didn't care about anything else. I wanted love. You know, that's really such a stronghold, you know, when you desire love. And Satan always comes along with a counterfeit.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
It seems like there's a thread of similarity in so many of these. It seems like there's a moment that you decide, this is it. I'm going. And it seems also that the thread is so promiscuous, so decadent. I heard one, he's in heaven today, but oh, what a pitiful person he was. He was older, and when you get the age of grandparents, you've got nothing. And I remember I was interviewing him, and I think it was too long before he died, and I said, I want you to speak to those young men out there that are burning with passion. And I told my director, I said, I want you to get a close-up. And his face really looked like 90 miles of bad road. I mean, it was, and I'll never forget, it still just squeezes my heart. He said, if it weren't for Jesus, you know, I'd be on a bar stool right now looking for someone. But he said, I understand that grandchildren bring so much joy. And I don't have and how Satan gives you lie after lie after lie after lie. But between where he was and a young man, it seems like they just say, okay, this is, I'm going for this. And they'll go all over the world. I just learned last week about Amsterdam and places like that. And there's a decadence. And another thing this gentleman told me was, there's no such thing as monogamy.
Yeah,
is that true?
That really was one of the disappointing things for me, because I really wanted stability, and I wanted a man, and I really wanted a Christian man. But, so
it's kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah. So I would find these couples who would say, oh, we've been together 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Oh, that's amazing. So it can be done. But eventually they would disclose we have an open relationship. And sometimes they would want me to come in and be a part of that. And I didn't. It was really disappointing, because I really started to see it's like no one's faithful. But this is even in the heterosexual world, because in the circle I ran in, I mean, I knew several women and men who were sleeping around on their spouses, and I really started to become very cynical. It's so easy to cheat these days that it seemed that no one was faithful anymore.
How old were you when your parents really recognized that this is the life you're living?
Well, I told them, I think around 19 or 20, maybe 21. My mom supports me in that she loves me. She doesn't support the life, but she just wanted me to know she loved me. My dad loved me too, but he made it very clear I don't accept it, and you know, and we'd had some battles and discussions about that over the years, but they love me. You know.
Did they not know? Did they have any kind of clue?
Yeah. One night, my parents were out of the house. I don't know where my siblings were, but when I walked into the living room, there was this book on the table, dining room table, and it said "Gay is not good." And it was a red cover, I think, with huge black letters. And I felt like one of them left that there to send me a message. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at it and kind of shoved it away, and it just fueled the anger. It's like, you don't get it, you don't understand it. I don't want to be this, but this is who I am. I can't make sense of it. And I think I just started to harden myself more and more to any outside influence. I was desperate. I wanted to be loved. And that's a driving, powerful force for anyone everybody wants to love and be loved.
How many years were you in this life?
About 25.
What was it that said, this is not working? After 25 years, I'm not getting anywhere.
Well, when you were talking about the elderly gentleman, I remember I would sit in bars and watch old men sit there and drink themselves into a drunken mess. And it really started to dawn on me how youth is valued in the gay community. And once you reach a certain age, you're tossed to the side. Yeah. And this had nothing to even do with God. I was determined, I'm not sitting in a bar when I'm old and drinking myself to death, being discarded just because I'm old. That really was, it really bothered me to watch these men. I felt sorry for them, I really did. And unless you had money and you paid for the male hookers or what have you, you pretty much weren't going to get attention. And I knew I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that is not going to be my life. And I just started to really I started asking more questions.
Satan's a real liar, isn't he? So when through all of this time, did you maintain this anger and this hard heart toward the things of the Lord?
Yeah, but I still had a desire for him. And that's why I delved, as I spoke about, into Hinduism. I had even gone into looking into New Age and occult teachings. I was really trying to find other avenues of creating my own brand of spirituality. And maybe I can get to God in a supernatural way. My goal was to avoid Christians. And so I was open to it. I was seeking answers, and I was frustrated because the Christians that I knew didn't seem to be asking the kind of questions I was. And I liked being around the New Age and occult people because even though they may have been doctrines of demons, you know, they were at least asking questions. They were really trying to understand the deeper meaning of life and why I'm here, and that spoke to me, you know.
Yeah, it seems like. You found acceptance in the homosexual community and with all the cults.
Yeah.
That's not
yeah,
a compliment to Christians, by the way.
Yeah.
If you just tuned in, I am talking to George Carneal. He's written a riveting book, and I think you kind of get the title, don't you? From Queer to Christ. What made you settle on that title?
Well, I actually...
There it is. Put it out there.
Well, I had From Homosexuality to Christ, and a guy at a book publishing place, he and I were speaking, and he said, you should think about changing it to queer. And it just clicked because it was quicker. And I thought, well, if you're walking by and you just get a quick snapshot of that book, you definitely know what it's about. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
No, you got that right.
Yeah.
And I often thought, well, why didn't you put gay?
I had some people say that as well, but
that does get your attention.
Yeah,
gets your attention for sure. What was the pivotal moment? Say, because it seemed to me like you were kind of on your own. I am leaving this, and you use a word in here, surrender to Christ. George, that's huge. That's huge. When I saw that, I thought of the chaos we're living in today. And these, I'm sorry, idiots who had to be comforted because the president they wanted was not elected, and so you have to go into safe spaces, and college kids needing Play-Doh and stuff.
Yeah.
And the word surrender is tough. I mean, that's one of the toughest words, if you mean it, that you're ever going to try to pursue. And I don't know, when I read your book, it sounded to me, and I know the Lord was drawing, but kind of cold turkey. I'm going to go with you.
It was a little bit of a process. I wish Christians would understand this is a very difficult thing to get out of and to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, that's all right.
I wish they would just have a lot more
that.
compassion and a lot more understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being hard-hearted about it and judging that individual, just be a friend and pray for them.
Mm-hmm.
Only God has the power to work in our life and really changes the power of the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
For me, you know, having lived in LA and being around celebrities and having been to award shows and being in the limousines and traveling and doing things that people strive for in this world, I was depressed and suicidal. I had no peace in my life. And in that gay life where you have all the sex and the drugs and the promiscuous sex, nothing was fulfilling for me. And at some point, when I was actually contemplating suicide, my dad called. And I think that was the beginning of slowly our reconnecting and rebuilding there. But
did he just call out the blue?
yeah, because we hadn't spoken for about 4 years, because I was really just so angry at everything. I wanted somebody to either feel the pain or to help me get out of it, and I didn't know how to do it. And I just felt like I wasn't getting any relief from anyone or anything, so I just shut down.
Did he say why he called?
He just said,
Out of 4 years?
Yeah, but when I was in Florida, there was a moment where I was still going through some things as well and very suicidal, and he just called out of the blue.
Isn't that like the Lord?
And I would say to Christians who have kids, whatever their bondage is, if it's drugs or alcohol or homosexuality or porn addiction, Christians need to know they really do have power by just constantly praying to God. Let Him handle the situation. It may have taken God 25 years to get me to where I needed to be, but I think I needed to wallow in that misery long enough so then when I came out of that life, in hindsight, I can look at it and I know, you know, you'll hear Christians talk about the fiery trial when God starts to clean house.
Yeah.
And mine was about 7 or 8 years. Do you need to do a break?
Yeah.
But when I was going through that, as tough as it got, the reason why I didn't run back into that old life, because I had been in it for so long and I knew it wasn't going to work, I didn't want to run back to that anymore.
Yeah, that wasn't going to work.
And I was going to have to go forward.
I typed up something you said that really spoke to me, and you just mentioned in a way, yes, Christians have an obligation to tell people about sin. The difference between Jesus and many Christians today is he didn't mistreat people. Boy, that is so well said. You went on a journey to, you call, clean house, and it didn't happen overnight, did it? You had to deprogram your mind and recognize the deception of homosexuality. Was that kind of a gradual understanding?
I had listened to the lies that the gay rights activists will push. I still couldn't get peace about it. And then when God put me in a liberal church where you hear the gay Christian or the Christian liberal theology, I still couldn't get peace. They will always hammer home God's grace, but they never talk about God's judgment.
Yeah.
And they go hand in hand. And I was sitting in class and I felt like God was impressing upon me the word deprogramming. And it really weighed heavy on me. And I thought, God's deprogramming of me of the lies of the conservative Christians, because they don't get it. They're just narrow-minded. And it's okay to be gay. But little did I know that God was deprogramming me of the lies of the liberal Christian theology. Because he wasn't going to give me peace in that. And then when I finally walked away from it and got in God's Word and finally surrendered and accepted what His Bible said, I had an overwhelming peace. And I knew then that's what He was doing. He was just getting me out of the lies.
That's, you know, when I started through your book and then I got to this part of it, it's so sound. I mentioned to you again, it's called From Queer to Christ, and the website's been up there for quite a while. You can get it through that website and Amazon and all those regular places. there's a lot of controversy now about the way the grace is being taught, and we don't have time to get into that. But the truth is, and I think you wrote it this way, that we have to deny our selfish desires. God hasn't changed. His standard hasn't changed.
You know, it really just comes down to, are you looking to make God fit into what you want, or are you honestly, sincerely desiring to follow Christ and do what His will is?
That's
and
so
for
good.
me,
Yeah.
I just had to read it and understand this is the way He says it, and I need to accept it and try to live it. Am I perfect? No. I struggle because I want to love. I want to love and be loved. And that's something I'm going to have to struggle with. But I remind myself, Jesus was celibate for 33 years. And I also tell myself, this is temporary. I'm focused on the eternal picture. And so
How are things with your family?
they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. My life is great. I'm happy. I'm really at much more peace than I've ever been. And I would say to anyone out there, again, I don't care what you're struggling with.
Yeah.
If you don't have your peace of mind, you cannot put a dollar value on that. I strongly urge them to come out, whatever that is, turn from it, give their life to Christ. I guarantee you won't regret it.
And that can be a whole list of things.
Yeah.
I would say that what you came out of is difficult, but God was there. And
I want Christians to understand what makes it difficult is when you're in that world for so long, it becomes your identity.
Yeah.
It's also a safe haven. It has a lot of pitfalls, but you feel safe there. Church is a place of anxiety for me. For the longest time, I didn't want to go into a church.
yeah,
So that's why it's so hard to come out, because you have a network of people who support you, but it's not the support you really need. But you need support in the Christian community, and that's just not really there.
right. And I hope these kind of programs, and we have them on with some regularity because God sends them, will educate the Christians
Yeah,
that all have sinned.
and falling short.
And there's sin is sin, you know.
Exactly.
Mine's not as bad as yours, but still sin. Oh, what a delightful guest you've been. And I'm sure that the audience agrees with me. If you ever come back this way, come and see us again. But how wonderful that we can be here. I'm nothing but a facilitator for the people that God brings that He wants you to see and hear. So it's a great privilege, and we are out of time, but please remember, there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you should miss a Homekeepers program, you can catch up by going to www.ctnonline.com. Click on CTN Programs and then on Homekeepers.